Okay, Spooky. Yeah, we're going to talk to our friends and family. What do you think? I know, you shared some sensitive information with me about everything that's going on. Yeah, maybe our new subscribers don't know. You're a member, sitting member of the National Kitty Crew Security Council. Right? Yeah, Speedy says, yep, Big Brother is. And my baby's right here. Ooh, it's a wonderful day in the neighborhood. Yeah, partly cloudy and blue skies. 75 with a light breeze. Life is good here in Mr. Tom's neighborhood. Ooh, it's nice. I love the fall. Oh, there you are, friends and family. Yeah, once again, I didn't see you pulled up. Yeah, I thought Cleo would alert me, but she's too busy eating lunch. So hey, what are we doing out here on the front porch today? Well, as you know, I've been talking to Spooky a lot and watching my feeds. Maybe you have not. You know, I know a lot of us, like me, we avoid the mainstream media. We don't get papers no more. We're magazines. Yeah, but we're on social media. And for people like me, the analytical type of kind, you know, being an engineer and all, it's hard to avoid. And here of late, once again, if you don't know, there is that possibility that the U.S. might be drawn into a war. Yep, that's fact. And there's always that possibility. I was thinking last night, what time in my life has not the U.S. been in a conflict or some type of war? And I just couldn't remember the day or the year. It seems like we're always in one. But also I'd like to say and premise this video that I have long not been a fan of war. My family has served in the U.S. military, all of its branches, and all throughout the creation of this country from the Revolutionary War. And we have fought as a family, and we've lost family members. Others were wounded in every conflict and war we've had. Yep, we were a military family. My two children suffered as well. And both are disabled because of past conflicts too. So with all that said, I'm just not a real fan of it. With the exception, there's always an exception to the rule. I do believe you really got no other choice. That if another people's or country invades your sovereign territory and attacks you, well, you do got two choices. You can throw your hands up and surrender, or you can fight back. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm not here to talk about who's right and who's wrong, what side we should be on. I'm here to talk about, as you all know, if you're new to the channel, or you've been with me for some time, I too believe in a level of preparedness, primarily for the most obvious that can happen wherever you may live and the times at hand. So, like here, we suffer tornadoes and hurricanes and violent storms that can affect our power, our supply chains, from everything from food to water to electricity and what have you, medical care. So yeah, it may be different in your area. The events you might want to stay prepared for at all times, should you be able to and can. You know, if you live up in the Northeast and, you know, the weather is not as bad, but it can still be dangerous. And, you know, if you live in the South, you may not have as much upper northern tier states and northwest, of course, that'd be snowstorms. We saw some really tremendous snow in the northern tier states, the Rockies, in the northwest last year. Remember that? 158 inches. I mean, my Lord, remember all the pictures of snow burying houses and what have you? Couldn't get in and couldn't get out for weeks on end. I mean, if you're on the West Coast, you should stay prepared for earthquakes that knock out all your infrastructure, electricity, water, your supply chains. And there's always, no matter where you live on the coast, as we're seeing this year, the threat of hurricanes. Up in the Northeast, hurricanes are rather rare, but you have what y'all call nor'easters, and they can be quite severe. So yeah, I've always taught the people that I know, and my children, and now my grandchildren, to be prepared for the obvious that could happen to you. But that can also be the loss of a job, a debilitating accident, which renders you unable to work for either some time or forevermore. There's so many things that can impact your life and shut down your ability to buy and provide for you and your family too. But what I wanted to come out here today and talk about, because people get worried, because some still do watch the news, and they still watch a lot of social media, which I gotta say now really takes advantage of the time sometimes. And I try my best not to get all involved in that mess. But the more I thought about it, and the more that people ask, and what can we do? How can we prepare? And how we can survive if the U.S. was to enter into a major war this time? And I think that should be fairly obvious, but maybe it's not. And in these trying times, with inflation so high, I don't care what the government says, you know, it's 10 times higher than what they report. We all see it in the grocery stores, at our gas stations, in our electric bills, and other basic services too. So it's extremely difficult now to begin preparing and to stay prepared. Now, if you've got a head start on it, or you've been doing it for many years like yeah, you're ahead of the game. So yeah, we all know in a major war, and we haven't been in a really major war that's affected the whole country, the last being the Vietnam War, and even then, we didn't have food rationing, energy rationing, and what have you. Yeah, there was the energy embargo that started in 1973, but it had nothing to do with the Vietnam War. The last war to have a major impact on not only services, everyday life, food, and what have you, everything from steel to rubber to all the Lord knows what, was World War II. Yeah, food was rationed. I remember my grandparents and great-grands talking about it. My grandmother still had ration books, and she showed them to us kids. You know, back then, they were allowed 4 ounces of meat per person, per household, per week. So if it was a family of 4, they could get a pound of meat. You know, in my particular parents' family, on my father's side, there was 5. So hey, woohoo! They could get a pound and 4 ounces for the week. Everything from sugar to butter to other fats was rationed. Now, water wasn't rationed, so at least you had that. Flour, all kinds of things. And if you're interested, you can look all that up and see what was rationed, so you are informed. Now, should this current conflict spread worldwide, as many said the Ukraine war would, but still to date in my mind has not, yeah, there would be rationing again, at the very least. So, if you can, and you got the money, and you don't got to have a lot to put a little back to stretch your meals. I mean, the number one thing is if we should go to war, yeah, I mean, if you're going to cover the number one, you're going to have some water on hand. Yeah, not that I think war over in the Middle East, which is currently the situation at hand, is going to cause us to not have water, but who knows? If you want to be totally prepared, you should already have it on hand for all those things I talked about earlier. Those natural disasters, accident, or loss of a job. Now, can anybody keep enough water on hand to go for the length of World War I or II? No, I don't think that's possible. But what you can do, and I did a video one time, I think it was a couple years back, where I said we should all know where our local water sources are, natural. And I took you on a walk, not too far from here, and showed you a couple of mine. Yeah, they're natural springs that build up into streams. The water's still pristine, coming out of the Appalachian Ridge here where I live on top. I got it tested, so I knew it wouldn't harm me. And if you have a natural spring, stream or creek anywhere near, and that's going to be your backup source, I'd spend a little bit of money, if you can. Of course, you can always boil it or get you a filter, which I'd recommend, and get it tested. Otherwise, you can always boil or buy you a filter like a Berkeley that I've had for a long, long time, sitting in a box, because I've never needed it. But it's there if I ever do. The next up, here again, should be obvious. Food. And here again, if you're preparing for natural disasters that can happen to you, or an accident that knocks you out of your ability to work, or even unemployment, just like here locally. Just this week, a company, a medical supplier, a rather large one, up in Opelika that's only an hour away, decided to shut their doors. 500 employees will be laid off by the end of the month. Yeah, that's going to be pretty tragic, especially in these times, as we all know. Their income is going away. And if you think unemployment in the state of Alabama is going to make up for what they normally make, you'd be sadly mistaken. It'll be something, but it'll never cover what they were normally making. So that's their personal disaster right now. And that proves my point. It don't got to be a natural disaster, a hurricane, tornado, or earthquake. It doesn't have to be a major war. It can be something as every day that can happen. It happened to me twice in my life. One day you're working away and life is good. By the end of the month, you're unemployed with no income. What do you do? And of course, during the times of my life, there wasn't, because of recession, an economic downturn. It wasn't like I was going to be able to go out and find a similar job anytime soon. And it was because of those two economic downturns that made me first start thinking, you got to have the basics in the cupboards for a while. Now, I'll be honest. Have I ever had as much as I have now? No. But I really got into it in 2007, preparing for the 2008 financial meltdown. So yeah, that's when I really got into it. You know, they wound up calling it the Great Recession. Many said it was worse than the Great Depression. Well, I don't know about all that. But it was bad for a whole lot of Americans. 23 to 27 million Americans lost their homes and everything they had. Yeah, they didn't have to worry about World War. They were already living far worse consequences than any war in modern times would have inflicted on them. Their food wasn't rationed, they just couldn't buy it at all. So that gets back to the point. If you're already prepared for certain things, then you got a good heads up and a good strong foundation. Or what if the U.S. were to go into a major war? And I'm talking World War. Because here again, I can't remember a day when we haven't been in some kind of conflict or regional war. Like I said, if you can tell me that day and that year, and I can probably prove you wrong, let me know in the comments below the video. So yeah, there's a lot of talk now, as there always is when these things blow up. And it's tragic, to say the least. Yeah, and I'm not going to go into what side's right and who's wrong. I don't got a stick in this fight. This is where my war begins and ends. Right here in the U.S. But yeah, so if you got the water covered, or at least you know where to get it and a way to filter it and purify it, got the number one basic of life covered. Number two is food, that we've already talked about why you should have it on hand if you can. The bare minimum is 2 weeks of something to eat to fill your belly, provide you with protein and energy. Yeah, most people that, you know, are prepared, do food storage and what have you, they know beans and rice are a good foundation. Yeah, will you get tired of beans and rice? Probably so. But do you know 75% of this world eats rice 3 times a day in some portion? Yes, they do. And they love it. You can watch it here on YouTube. And they have all ways of jazzing it up with a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And I'm not talking the big cities and tourist centers. I'm talking about the average, everyday people. And yes, even now, with inflation so high, beans and rice have gone up too. But when you look at it over the whole food groups, it's still bottom of the shelf, the cheapest you can buy. And rice, if properly stored, you know, in a cool, dry, sealed, some type of container or bag to keep the insects from jumping in it, will virtually last forever. So we found. Beans, I got a video that shows you, yes, those too can last forever, but you got to know what to do with them when they really get old. And I got videos about that. Just look it up. Just type in beans. I'm sure it'll come up on my home page. I even made bread out of old beans. Can you imagine that? So could I spice it up with what I know in foraging and gardening? I sure could. And then, you know, depending on your social economic status, you can build on that rice and beans. Pasta is the next step up. And if it's properly stored in an airtight packaging, vacuum sealers are great if you can. But if not, wrap it up tight. Wrap it up in foil. And hey, put it in a can if you can, to keep the rodents and bugs from getting to it. And it will last several years. And then there's whatever you can afford from then. Have some spices, salt and pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, and your favorites too. And then you can just build on that. There's so many videos out there of how you can expand it, stock it. There's powdered milk. Hey, powdered peanut butter. I got that too. High in protein and low in fat. There's powdered eggs, if you can afford it. Thankfully, I bought mine a long time ago, because I can't afford them now. And they're in number 10 cans, so they're sort of bulletproof. But I'm fortunate, because I started a long, long time ago. But if you got nothing in the shelves but what you gonna eat by the end of the week, hey, grab an extra pound of rice or a pound of beans when you go. Put it back in a cubby hole. So yeah, food, you're gonna need some. The more you can stock up, the better. And then, of course, it always comes up gardening. Yeah, well, you can do that. But if you think going out and digging up your yard, just wherever you want, you're going to have an abundant harvest, well, that's sort of like playing the lottery. You might. It's possible. But most likely not. Yep. And then you got to have the seeds. You got to have fertilizer, amendments, tools, all of that. But that would be all kind of stuff if that's your plan, to start putting away or always keep on hand. I know many of y'all do. Could you tell me in the comments below the video? And then many of y'all can. And that's another way too. Gardening, or even buying in bulk or on sale at your local groceries. I know a lot of people over the course of my life that didn't garden, but when they saw sales on certain veggies and produce, boy, they really loaded up. And they'd bring it home and can that too. Yeah, you gotta have a pressure canner or a water bath, depending on what you're doing, and I'm not gonna get all into that on this video. You gotta have the jars. You gotta have lids. You gotta have that kind of stuff. And it all costs money too. But here again, if you're able, and that's in your plan, then you know to keep it all on hand. I have canning jars here, and I've canned a lot in the past. But with one little old man, it's just getting harder. Because to do, a few jars and put away, yeah, I can do it. But for now, as long as I can afford it, and I don't know how long, I'll just buy it at the store when it's on sale. But what you want to keep on hand, you can. Canned goods are good, but they'll only last so long. Just like box goods. You can do that too. But then it gets to being how much you keep on hand and how religious you are in rotation. I'm going to tell you what, if you're keeping a year, 2, 3, or 4, I don't see how, 1 or 2 people can ever keep that rotated before eventually some of those cans, because I've had that experience here, burst, or the box goods go rancid or stale. I'm telling you the truth because I've lived it in my past. So yeah, be careful what you put back for that long-term storage for what if. Because the one thing you don't want to do is go in the pantry and pull out some hamburger helper and open the box. And no, that pasta has went rancid because it had oil in it all the time. Yep, so you got to have the food on hand. But you know, if you want a can and you can't afford the pressure canner, they're quite expensive, maybe you can pick one up in a thrift store or on Facebook Marketplace, Etsy, or what have you, maybe eBay. You can get a score. Or another thing you can do is get in with like-minded people who are wanting to get into canning and split the cost. I know people like my parents that did that when they first started a long, long time ago. They got in with a few other families, bought all the equipment, and they all shared the work. My family did the garden because we had a huge one every year. They would help a little, maybe not, but when it came time to put all that veggies and produce up every year, as well as butchering the animals that they had to share in too, they all showed up to take care of the food. So think about that. I mean, that's something seniors can do. Yeah. In those senior living centers, you know, that are pretty popular down in Florida and other places too. Because, yeah, we seniors, just like all people on fixed incomes, our income's buying less and less with each and every day. Primarily food, energy, and basic services, medical, pretty much everything we do. So yeah, you got to have the food. There's other things that might happen. Not so much if we go at war off of our shores. And I hope to never see again a war come to our ground, the U.S. soil. Because then the whole game changes on what you might want to have. Then we're actually getting our stuff blown up and taken away. So then you got to think about things like, definitely like about water, power, medical care, and all of that. But it never hurts. And here again, if you're prepared for those natural disasters, to keep the proper first aid kits and some medical supplies on hand. You definitely want to keep what medications you can, whether over the counter or your prescriptions, as much as you can. Stay stocked up. Now, if you're like me, about the most you can keep on hand is 90 days. And there are other ways to go about that, but I'll leave it at that. So there's your medications, there's first aid supplies that you could all possibly need, and that all depends on how war goes. I mean, like I say, we've been involved in conflicts, in regional wars, ever since I've been alive, and we've never really had food rationing. We've never lost our power, water, or had, a strain on our medical system, well, with the exception of the events that happened in 2020, 21, and finally played out in early 2022. So it all depends on you, how deep you want to go. Yep, but I wouldn't live in fear. Prepare as you can, and you think you must. Each of us, depending on where we live, hopefully is at some level of preparedness, if we can. And I hope all of you have a little bit stashed away too. But that's just some food for thought, and the reason I wanted to do this video is just to ease some minds of what we should be thinking about. No, we shouldn't be panicking and going to the store. I'm not one of them, and I never have been. Ever since this channel was revised in 2018, I've been a place to come, share a part of my life, a little bit of calmness and serenity, and I think a little bit of rational reality. So no, I'm not panicking. I'm not filling up the house. If you want to, and that's what you think, well, good for you. That gets back to my number one golden rule. I'll do me, and you do you, and I'll still be your friend. I hope you'll be mine too. But yeah, I mean, right here now, everything's peaceful, calm, for now. Could that all change sometimes in the future? Well, I don't have a crystal ball. And there's always the possibility. See, that's what keeps driving the anxiety and the fear. Nobody can say it won't ever happen, because there's always that possibility. You know, I could be sitting here talking with y'all on the front porch while y'all are out sitting in the yard right now enjoying the shade and the breeze. And we could be hit by a meteor. Though the chances are universally extremely small. But there's always that possibility. I mean, I could have a volcano crop out of the ground on the ridge up top. It's a possibility. There's a possibility of flood right now. So if it floods right here, most of the southeast, southwest, well, Gulf Coast would be underwater too. So I don't worry about that too much. But yeah, regional floods, you know, if you live in low-lying areas, that's a concern. And that's what I want you to think about. And if you can, and if you would, these videos are not so much about me telling you what I do and what you should do, but to make you think. How prepared are you for the general things that could happen in your life? And in doing so, are you prepared somewhat for the bigger things that can, could, and might happen to you? I would think you would be, to some extent. Yeah, and then just think back. How many times in our life has there just been nothing to eat? Now, I don't mean when we went to the store and it was out of frozen potatoes or no hash browns and what have you. I mean, when you went, you couldn't have scrounged up a meal if you had to. Those times, even with the events of 2020, have been extremely rare here. Not that it's not the case in other countries where you may live that are watching Mr. Tom right now here on the front porch too. So yeah, am I panicking? Am I losing sleep at night over the current events that are happening now? And what will happen to me because of them, or my family, my children and my grandchildren, my close friends and family, like so many of you are now? I'm not. But I will say this. I wish it never happened. And I still do wish people could finally get along. You know, when I was a young man, I was tired of war. I was tired of burying family and friends. And I thought in my mind, in my younger days, that by the time I reached the tender age of 67, we would have learned better and seen no one wins when anyone goes to war. Sadly, after 40 odd years thinking and praying for that, here we are yet again. So hey, I want you to put some thought. Like I say, this video is more to spur your thought, and maybe you'll share. You don't got to say exactly what you got. You know, I got 5,000 pounds of rice and beans, but maybe you can share what you prepare for and how you do it too, in general. Food, medical, and oh yeah, I forgot one thing. Yeah, should war ever come, to our soil on the U.S., you got a decision to make. And that's like in any attack, conflict, or war. You got two choices: to throw your hands up or fight back. And to fight back means you might want to have something to do it with. You know what I mean? And I'll leave it at that. Because YouTube don't like that talk. And neither does the internet. And I got enough problems in my life. So take a minute, if you would. I know a lot of you really contribute to the videos and the content in the comments below. And that's what this video was about. Spur your thought, get you thinking if you've not. So maybe you can check in to current events a little and see what's going on. Yeah, none of us like to think about it, and we like to avoid it. But I'm going to tell you what, burying your head in the sand when something's coming down the road is never a good plan. Analyze, evaluate, have a reality check. Don't listen to all the talking heads that make more money from drumming up the anxiety and the fear than anybody else does when these things crop up. Yep, in the end, you're right. It's all about the money and greed. But think about it. Are you ready? How long can you go? What have you done to prepare yourself, if you can, and your friends and family too? Okay? Because I'll be waiting and watching and reading, because I learned so much from every one of you. We have a fantastic, knowledgeable community. Many of you practice the things I do. Some way much more, some less, some not. But that's what makes a community so diverse. And I think it's because of that diversity that we all grow and learn. And plus the fact now, it's not only us in the U.S. and Canada, but we're in the UK, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and I always forget some as I'm reminded. But it's a long, long list now. And I appreciate every last one of you, wherever you may live. You're all important to this world and to me. So hey, enough of that. It's not meant to be doom or gloom. It's just meant to make you think and share the knowledge you have. And hey, I appreciate you coming by and spending a little old time with the little old man. Hey, makeup lady was here today. Gave me a nice clean shave, trimmed up the mustache. She said she was going to give me a haircut next week. We'll just have to see. And of course, this was all prompted by a national security meeting with Spooky, the head of the National Kitty Crew Security Council too. You know he is. Financial advisor too. Yep. You never know what your pets can do for you. So hey, I got to get on with it. It's getting on in the afternoon. There's still things to do out in the yard. Yeah, I think I showed you in the last video. We had a lot of picking to do. And I'm still picking some too. And getting them to where they'll store all through the winter too. And that's another thing to think about in all this. What you garden and what you grow and what you can hold all winter long for the least amount of money on hand has a great impact too. Yep. Hint, that's why I grow winter squash. I don't got to do nothing but put it in the house, and I'll eat it all through the winter, spring, and next summer too. So yeah, until Spooky, who's waiting patiently for a little bit of treats. I think that's what he was worried about, you know, World War breaks out again, he knows those treats are going to be rationed or unavailable. And of course Cleo, Speedy, and sometimes Heathcliff. And my big boy, Fluffy Muffin too. And of course Princess Gracie inside, waiting for her treats too. See y'all on that next video. Y'all take care. Stay safe out there. Live as well as you can and prepare as you think you must. And may God bless each and every one of you as you bless those in your lives. Goodbye for now. Spooky, you ready for some treats? I know it ain't time yet, but I could cut you some slack. Yeah, since you were so helpful and gave me so much advice. I get confused. I couldn't see. That's Cleo. They all look alike. Because here's my big boy, Spooky. That's what we keep the collar on, which I might add is extremely old. And he loves. I can take it off him, set it down, and he'll pick it up and bring it back. Yeah, Trixie was that way too. She always had a rhinestone one, you know. I never told her they were rhinestones. She thought they were diamonds. Yeah, I should have known. He was right beside me all the time. So yeah, y'all. It's a beautiful day in my neighborhood. And I think it'll remain that way. Well, y'all, I'm going on in to get them. Then we got to do some more picking, gathering, and brushing off. Got to put the food away for the winter to come, which won't be far off. Later, all.